Somebody who says, well, tell me about your product. I'm like, can I ask you 3 questions first? What's the biggest thing you struggle with? What's the latest thing you bought? And people love to talk about themselves, but they're expecting you to talk about your product, and you almost like the longer you can actually not talk about your product, the more likely are you going to sell them. When the board comes after me, when basically my revenue becomes flat, when it's like, well, okay, well, do me a favor, call me when that happens, I'll be ready for you. They're going to buy in their terms. It's not for me to go like, let's close you today. That's ridiculous. Nobody wants that kind of sales.
How I create that level of urgency. Because most of the time as a seller...
You don't create the urgency. They create the urgency.
Tell me more. First of all, like, I read all your books, and I was quite curious to understand where is the moment when you start to hire yourself and start to build a product instead of get yourself hired into a company. And if you start to understand that, how you look at it.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 things. One is my mom would tell you I was an engineer out of the womb. Like I wanted to break things and build things since I've been very, very small. And so there's also this part of me that likes to help people. Right. And so when I work on product, I work on the product, and the product helps people, but I don't help people, right? And when I consult to people or advise people, I get to do that, but I don't get to build products. So to be honest, my freedom comes from the ability to go back and forth between helping people and building product, because those are the 2 things I love to do. And to be honest, I don't think I can do one without the other, and I don't like to be too out of balance between those 2 things. I always like to be building something. Doesn't matter what. So like all the paintings behind me are my paintings because I had to build something.
I understand. I was like really curious is if someone who's a startup founder is listening to our discussion, like what are the things that he should consider when he is starting a startup? Because the life of a startup founder, it's something that it's very challenging. Sometimes people don't get what you're building. You get a lot of frustrations, you get a lot of no's, and you still need to build, and you have it inside of you. Like how you look at that?
Yeah. So the first thing is like, one of the reasons why it takes so long is because you really don't know what you're doing. Right. And the reason why I think this is important is because the fact is we just keep trying things over and over, and we feel like the more we try, the more it will work, and that's actually false. So for example, we end up spending way more time on the website than anybody else will spend looking at the website. We look at the logo, we look at that stuff's irrelevant. Like the first thing I do when I build a product is I don't have a brand, I don't have a company name, I don't have a brand name. I'm like, we're just going to build this and see if we can get people to use it. If it helps them make progress, right? So one is, I would tell you, it doesn't have to be that crazy. I think one of the biggest problems is there's so much time that you have between things, or you used to, that you had to make up work to do. And now I feel like the fact is you can build, I can spend a whole week building and come out with something at the end of the week, which is kind of amazing, where before we couldn't do that, right? But for founders, like the first thing I would tell you is and again, this is old cliche, but most people fall in love with their product because it's their idea and it's a manifestation of their ego, of like what they want. But I would tell them that your product is shit, and it will always be shit. What you want to be able to do is actually figure out who do you want to help and what struggling moments do they have. Because if you fall in love with the customer and wanting to help them, and you fall in love with the problem that they have, the reality is your product can be half as good as you want it to be and literally service twice as many people. Right? So it's a big paradox between trying to build the best product and the ideal product and the most correct product, and building something that helps somebody make progress. Because my experience is it's a lot less than we think it is. And to be honest, we end up over engineering the product dramatically as a startup founder. And I'm guilty of that, like at least the first 5 times. It took me a long time to learn that.
Okay.
But like I've built 2 products in the last year. I've formed 2 companies, 2 startups. I found a partner who basically has all the technical skills. I know about the struggling moment and they know about the struggling moment. We agreed on who we're going to focus on for the struggling moment. We focus on what markets we're going to go after. And now we're to the point where we built the product in 8 or 10 weeks and we're already shopping it around. We've already got beta users and we don't even have any company name yet. Right.
So for the terms and conditions, what do you do?
But we have terms and conditions, but the notion is we're trying to, what we realize is if we name it too early, we'll name it incorrectly. That's one of the lessons I learned, is then you try to make the product fit the name you came up with.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
And so part of this is, again, the product and the consumer or the customer and their struggling moments, and then the product are the most important things. Everything else can be made actually relatively quickly. But those 3 things and the interaction are what the hardest part of development is, or startups is.
Okay. I was like curious at the moment that you said about struggles, and for sure that's like one of the things that I learned from you after I discovered Jobs to be Done. It was the part that I started to look at struggling moments and not pain points and try to understand what means struggle in the end.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when I have presentations and I debate with people, because I tell them, if you struggle, you'll buy, either way you don't. And people start to get into discussions and it's very nice. But what I wanted to understand is how you look at struggles when they are in a more isolated place, like when you're building B2B products, where it's an architecture. You were talking in the book about the big job and the small job.
Yeah, big hire, little hire. Yep.
Yeah.
So the difference between the two is like there's what we would call switching jobs. These are the jobs of why you'd stop using one tool and you might use a new tool, right? It's what causes you to say, I'm going to buy the tool. But ultimately, the little hire is, when am I going to use the tool? What situations do I find myself in where I'm going to reach for that tool? And ultimately, what I started with is I always started to build it for the user. And what I realized is when I built it for the users, the buyers never wanted to buy it. And so I needed to actually understand what the buyers were trying to do and what the users were trying to do. And they're actually always at odds. They're never aligned.
Yeah, but if you look at the...
So part of this is actually finding and almost being the marriage counselor or the family counselor to help them understand, like, if you want this outcome, I got to be able to do these things. If you want that outcome, I got to do these other things, and they're at odds. And the more I could actually talk to them about where the friction is, that's ultimately where the trade-off has to be decided.
Pentru că e dat de gust, te întrerup să zic că Launchpod dă voce poveștilor de startup-uri românești cu un twist global. Podcastul este o inițiativă a Launch Romania, powered by BCR, cu sprijinul Google și în colaborare cu partenerul nostru fondator, How2Web, și partenerul nostru media, Startup.ro. At the same time, like when you said about the switching part and what's important for the big hire,
yes,
most of the time, like what I look now into the market, most of the jobs are, you have products for everything. Like a lot of people are like building products.
But people don't know what their job is. So half of this is them discovering the job they want to do. And so there's lots of products to help them, but it's like, do I need a chat thing? Do I need what do I actually get given the problem? Most people haven't framed the problem they're trying to solve well enough. And so part of our job as the product people is to actually help them articulate the problem they can't articulate. That's shopping. Shopping is about learning about what to do. There's a difference between shopping and using. And the big hire is all about shopping. Like, how do I decide which tool to buy? How do I decide that this is a problem? How do I know I'm making that this is going to actually be fixed? Right? The little hire is about, how do I do it? What do I do? What are the actual steps and process to actually use it to solve the problem?
And
they're like two different levels, two different like one, the managers or the buyers are up here trying to look at the whole system, where the users are down here and they're in their little silo about trying to do it. But I gotta make it work for them, and I gotta make it work for them, because if I don't make it work for both, I don't get hired.
Yes.
This is why B2B is so much harder, because you actually, usually in the consumer world, the buyer and the consumer are the same people. But not in all things, right? Like parents buy toys for kids.
Yes.
So it's the same problem. I got to make sure if I design a toy that a kid wants, a parent would never buy it. And if I designed a toy that the parents wanted, kids would never play with it.
Yes.
And so I have to learn how to actually understand both of their realms and negotiate basically how to find the sweet spot between the overlap of what they want to be able to do. So the world is full of solutions and it's full of problems, but the problem is helping people find the progress that they seek.
And
let's be, we're creatures of habit. We would prefer to not change at all. Yeah. And so when we change, we have to move into a different mode of thinking and a different, almost style to basically figure it out. So that's why most of the interviews that I start with are the switching interviews. I talk to people who have switched behaviors so I can find the pushes. I don't know what the pushes are, but I start with, I know they went from this product to that product. They stopped using this one and hired this one. Okay, what in the world happened that made you want to do that? That's where you get you don't sit around the room thinking about what is going to push people to change, because to be honest, that list is infinite. But the notion of what's actually pushed somebody to make a change, that's a finite list of like 20 things. It's not 100 things. And so this is all pattern recognition.
I'm listening and trying to sink in the answers, and at the same time try to figure out what's the next question. And it's hard.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah, because like one of the things that it's challenging is positioning and trying to understand, like building a startup at the moment, and we are trying to help the people in the B2B space. And at the same time, when we are looking around, all the products in the same market are putting the same value proposition and the same outcome, because people are looking for the outcomes, not for the outputs.
That's right.
So most of the people promise like you get your sales cycle in half using our product.
Yeah.
And it's the same.
And nobody believes it. Because here's the thing is if you said, like, do you struggle with basically your salespeople doing a lot of running in circles, calling on people who aren't going to, like, what's the underlying problem that will allow you to cut it in half? And so most people talk about the outcomes, but they don't talk about the context. Positioning has to include the struggling moment that they have for them to go like, oh my God, that's me. So half the time people are talking about all these things. They're like, yeah, that I don't need that. I don't want, like, I wanted that, but that probably means I have to change my whole sales process. I don't want to do that. Right. And so we think the problem is obvious. And what I'm saying is the problem is not obvious to people. And here's the real, to me, aha, is if you can describe the problem better than they can describe the problem, they automatically assume you have a solution that works. It's dangerous, but it's true.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember if it was in demand side sales you were talking about as a consultant.
Yes, advisor. They're an advisor to help people buy. They're not there to sell.
Yeah, and
right?
Now I connected with that what you're saying.
Yeah. And so as a founder, the fact is there's a lot of things. And what I would tell you is the single greatest skill you have to develop that you did not learn in school and you didn't learn anywhere else is sales. That's why I wrote Demand Side Sales, because I have to sell an investor. I have to sell a co-founder. I have to actually sell employees to convince them to come work for me. I have to sell customers. I have to sell consumer. And so the skill that I believe is that is the lowest on any founder's radar is sales. They think sales is easy. Sales is so hard. And like, this is where, again, if I have good marketing, I think of marketers or salespeople who can't close because all they want to do is add one more feature. Oh, they'll buy if they get one more feature. That's not how it works.
I get what you're saying, and at the same time, I'm laughing because I'm that kind of person. Like
Yeah. I'm sorry.
no worries. But the funny thing is that I tagged him with the other co-founder that she is way better in closing, and we are like I'm
Yeah.
opening the discussions, and she is helping
That's
with the
right.
closing.
By the way, that's the whole thing is you don't need to be good at all of it, but you need to actually understand it enough or have one of you the founders have some sales skills because sales is actually a really hard thing, especially for me as an engineer and being a scientist. It's so qualitative in nature, but there are still patterns to be seen. And what I realize is that me talking about my product before I even know their situation is kind of foolish, right? And so the whole notion is if somebody says, well, tell me about your product, I'm like, can I ask you 3 questions first? What's the biggest thing you struggle with? What's the latest thing you bought? What's the, and then people love to talk about themselves, but they're expecting you to talk about your product. And you almost like, the longer you can actually not talk about your product, the more likely are you going to sell them.
Okay. Can you get me into?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense because that's one of the things that I heard it in one of your presentations, the story with you're asking questions at weddings with people you don't know.
Yeah.
And I started to do the same just to uncover how people buy their cars because it's a big sale and they need to take decisions plus their wife into the discussion.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of the time I ask questions, but at a certain point, I ask questions, I understand the situation, but how I create that level of urgency? Because most of the time as a seller...
You don't create the urgency. They create the urgency.
Tell me more.
Why did they switch? Typically, for example, if you look at cell phones, when do people get cell phones? A new cell phone. In the old days, it was when the new model came out. But now it actually... It's either if it's broken, you have to replace it and it doesn't work. That's one thing. But upgrading is a very different animal. And most of the sales happen during holidays because people want a few days to basically make sure that they can get the new phone to the old phone or the old phone to the new phone and that they can make it work and they feel comfortable.
Oh.
And so the urgency doesn't come by the sale. The urgency comes because I have time.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so what it is you can try to create urgency, but what you do is you create a sale that creates urgency in them. You need the urgency is in them, not on you.
And for sure, but can't you accelerate it? Of
course. What happens? So here's one way to accelerate it. What happens if you don't solve this problem?
It will become way bad than it is now.
So why are you waiting?
Yeah, it's not burning enough.
It's not burning up. So what would have to happen to make it be burning enough that you have to do something about it? When the board comes after me, when basically my revenue becomes flat, when it's like, well, okay, well, do me a favor, call me when that happens. I'll be ready for you. They're going to buy in their terms. It's not for me to go like, let's close you today. That's ridiculous. Nobody wants that kind of sales.
Yeah. Now I get what you're saying, and I don't know if you're familiar with spin selling.
Yep. I'm sure there's a derivative of it somewhere in there, but it's that whole notion of it's their problem, not yours, and ultimately they're going to solve it on their time frame. And to be honest, when people go like, yeah, it's just not for me, I'm like, well, here's the thing: if you have this problem or that problem, call me because I can solve those problems. And a year and a half later, they call me back because of me saying they have this problem now. The thing is everybody speaks features and benefits, but the most important thing is to talk about the problem you solve, the struggling moment that you actually help people overcome, because that's what they can resonate with. They don't know what to buy. They don't know what the answer is. They don't even know what some of the outcomes are. That's what shopping does.
Now I can relate with your presentation from product. I don't remember, you had it 1 year ago and you're presenting the intercom interface with the 4 squares.
Yeah.
And people have problems with acquisition, then engagement, then learning, and so on.
Exactly. And once you own those problems, they can't see it. They like when they describe the problem so well. And oh, by the way, the struggling words were cheaper than the feature words. So they were able to lower their costs because these are people at the time, they didn't have any answer to a solution. They just knew they had a problem. And so we look at all the competition and we got to differentiate ourselves. And the reality is the way you differentiate yourself is talk about the problem and the progress. Don't talk about your product. Because if they have the problem and they're ready to make some progress and they can articulate that, then your product fits perfectly. So now I should talk about the product because now you know where they are and where they want to go. But if you start talking about your product before then, the fact is then you're trying to force fit it. So I've interviewed a lot of salespeople, and like in the old software model was to find the problem and then distort the product to fit and solve that problem.
Yeah,
and that's bullshit too. Like if they don't have the if you get like I can tell you numerous people have told me I've sold something to somebody that I knew was not going to solve the problem, but they believed it was because we were this big company. I'm like, I get it. That's how, and to be honest, everybody's rewarded in that except for the person who basically has to fire you in 6 months because you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And that's one of my biggest fears in being a founder-led sales, because I don't try to force fit the square into the circle.
That's right.
But at the same time, as a founder, you build something. And then you learn, and then you need to readapt. And one of the challenges...
But you need to get back to why did you build it? You need to step back and say, who is this for? What do they get? When are they going to reach for it? We just think like the thing is this is why I hate the word TAM, total addressable market, because that's just a big, ridiculous scam too. Just because there's 8 million people, 8 million companies that are in this category, the fact is how many of them are really struggling? Like if you think about small business, how many small businesses are struggling with accounting? Not many. They got to figure it out. And so even though it's a huge market, the fact is like, oh, we've got to get 10% of the market. What does that mean?
I get what you're saying. I'm raising now, and I had to put those numbers, and it's at the same time, it's a challenge to really believe them. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yep.
But at the same time, the discussion that I wanted to take it into is you have a product that it's like a monster because has two heads, is different, has different features that you hallucinated, but people requested from you.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
How you untangle that?
So the way you untangle that is you go deep into not only the context and the outcome, but then the journey of how they actually get to that next place. Because like for example, at Intercom, they had literally like 40 different things they could do, right? And ultimately the fact is but if I was having an engagement problem, there was only 10 things I needed to really know. I didn't need to know all the other 30. And so they didn't rebuild the product at that time. What they did is they just shut off those other 30 features when you said, oh, I want this. And so part of it is that the other part is we hallucinate because, this is I'm guilty of this because I think they train us as engineers this way, which is like, if we can build it, we should, because somebody will want it.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is that the fact is like, this is when you start to take 2 steps back. I have to then go find somebody who wants it. Out of 8 billion people in the world, I got to find one person who wants this feature. But if I actually study a group of people and understand their struggling moment, I've already chosen who I'm going to sell to because I'm studying their struggling moments. And ultimately, I don't have to. It's not hard to sell anymore because I've grounded it in a place where there is demand. Right. And so most people think the product comes first, right? And the product creates demand, and that's wrong. Struggling moments create demand, right? And when there is no solution, the demand just keeps being there dormant. I've worked in many categories where all of a sudden it's like this, oh my God, this came out of nowhere. And the reality is like I worked with a company called Southern New Hampshire University, and it's like the insight we got was how many people want to go back to school but can't. And ultimately, when we actually like interview people, it's like, I want the knowledge so I can get a better job. I want to know so I can actually get a raise. I want to learn more, right? But the reason why they went back to school and the reason why they went to the physical location are completely different. And so they ended up building a system that basically allowed people to get a great educational experience, different than face to face, and ultimately did it on their time and their time frame. They have over 150,000 students. And the thing is how many people wanted to go back to school but couldn't 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? It was there. Nobody knew how to do it. And will it be there in the future? Absolutely, it will be. It's a constant of saying, how do I actually get education? And now what's happening is everything's getting smaller. So nobody would think that YouTube was a competitor to Harvard.
Yeah,
but it is.
I get what you're saying. And like one of the things that when I was really a kid, I was bullied a lot. And because of that, I started to be hyper vigilant and started to analyze everything. And that's why I get into product, because I started to analyze people. And because of your framework, it created order into my chaos.
Yeah.
And it helped me a lot to look into different places and try to understand better how people take decisions.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I probably miss, and it's something that I'm trying to understand, is the fact that you're going and asking people, but at the same time, how you understand, like, what's the context that they're like. Most people lie.
No, they all lie. So that's the whole, that one of the underlying premises is that the interview process or protocol I've developed or that I've modified comes from criminal and intelligence interrogation. I'm checking when they're lying and how they're lying because they don't even know why they did what they did.
Okay.
Right? And so I will tell you that there are many times where I'll do an interview and people go like, holy crap, I guess, like, because the first thing they say, oh, why'd you buy a new car? Oh, it had great gas mileage and I got a deal on it. But that's not why they bought a new car. And when you walk them through the journey, the fact is it's like painful for them. And there's a lot of things, but ultimately it's like, why couldn't you wait? Well, I just had a big repair bill and it's starting to make more noises. And I'm worried that the noise is going to be something even bigger. So I'm better off getting rid of this car than getting a new car. Like, that's what's causing them to get a car, not a deal.
Yeah.
Right. And so
you're searching for a deal.
Right. But the thing is if you look at it, what's interesting is that when they finally did it, their notion of was a deal was the fact that the dealer gave them $500 off, which was nothing. It was, and to be honest, they overpaid. If you look on Blue Book, they overpaid for the car. They didn't even know how to look for that. So the deal was literally that somebody was willing to give them something to basically buy it. Crazy. The word deal means so many different things, and it's a different thing in every category. And so you start to realize, like, but a deal might be a trigger that enables them to say it's time, but a deal is not a causal domino that has to fall to make people buy. It does not happen.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And if you're going in through this, what's the main, how to say, mistake that people do, and you figure it out and you tell them like, dude, you're doing it wrong. And it's something that it's boggling me, because if you have the literature, like if you take learning to build step by step, you'll not go very far. But at the same time, people are going around.
Yep. I think the biggest thing to me is that it was a lie that I was told in engineering school, which is build it and they will come. And it's just a lie. And so what happens is you end up building whatever you think it's going to be. And to be honest, you also have, like, I want to make it right. I want to make it perfect. I want to make it ideal. And the reality is like, at some point, I will tell founders that want me to be their advisor, I'm like, if you've got a vision of what the product should be, you need to get it out. Because the reality is they can't learn anything new, because all they're trying to do is figure out what they got to do. And so what happens is I would tell them, take the 3 months, go build out what you want to do. Like, you don't need my help. But it's really about them emptying their head so they're ready to hear the stuff they need to hear.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's just totally. One of those things where it's like I got to do this. I guess how would you do that? How would you do this? I'm like, look, go build what you want to build, and then when you're ready, we'll talk. And you're ready when you basically say like, yeah, I was wrong. Because if you're not wrong, you don't need me. And if you were wrong, then I can help. But it's like it seems like a waste. But what I've learned is that if I try to inject this into their thinking too early, and they're too caught up in what they have to build, it's like it's not worth the energy for me. I can't do it. I'm not successful. The other thing I'll say is that I don't work with new founders much anymore. I work with three, four, like by the third time somebody's done a startup, they know their shit.
Even they had success or not?
Even if they didn't have success, they learned so much. They know exactly, like, to be honest, my favorite is somebody who's been a founder 2 times before, and neither one was successful for, I'll say, structural reasons. And ultimately the fact is that, but they're ready to go. That's how I found my 2 co-founders were basically people who ran stuff before, and basically they did okay, but they didn't knock it out of the park. I'm like, you ready to do it real, like in a real way? That's how I found them. Like, nice. Lots of people, there are a lot of people who are founders who are looking for ideas. And the thing that I would say is I have lots of ideas. I'm looking for the right founder to help me build it. So that's where I've decided, like, I'm willing to do more startups, but I'm not going to be the founder, founder. I'll be a co-founder. And ultimately, I want to find somebody who has all the skills but doesn't have the right market quite yet. And so if I can literally say, here's a struggling moment, here's a set of consumers, here's what the product is like, would you want to go build this? That's how I recruit my founders.
Sounds very interesting. And when you started to say about startup founders, I was like really curious, like, do you have a notebook where you write struggling moments, or do you have them because you do a lot of market analysis, or how you?
So this is a skill that once you get it, you can see struggling moments everywhere. You can see it in your life. You can see other, like, I can go to a cafe and literally see 1,000 struggling moments. Right? People are waiting in line, right? That door, people keep banging into the door. Like they're just everywhere. And so part of it is what are the significant struggling moments we really need to solve? And so once you see the world through struggling moments, it's like now you can actually pick, but most people find a problem, and it's like, it's just not, like, a lot of startups are going after a problem that's not big enough to actually spend the time or energy to solve.
I wanted to ask, that was the next question, because I have the same feeling. I see struggling moments, but at a certain point I ask myself, like, does it work? Do
they try to make progress? So the thing is it's the combination of, do they struggle, and have they tried to do something about it? If they have tried to do nothing about, so for example, in a lot of big corporations, you find that there's struggling moment, like email is just a big struggle, but everybody just accepts it. And there's nothing they can really do. And they call tech support, but they don't really get any help. And so ultimately they're just stuck with where they're at. So now I could come in and do that, but they're not sitting around bitching about email, because it's now just, that's how it is. So a lot of times struggling moments are just hidden under the surface of, well, that's just the way we work.
And can you change that? Like, if you take the example of email, how you can change a big structure, because it's a big organization and it's a problem in the organization.
That's right. So are you familiar with Hey?
Yes, from Basecamp.
Yeah, from Basecamp, from Jason and the team, right? That whole thing is that they're one of the few people I've ever seen bitch enough about email to say, we've got to change email. And they literally built the product for themselves. Right. And it's about, the notion is like, one is like, the whole aspect is what's interesting is you see the mentality problems people have around email. Email is like, I can send you an email, right? Or I get an email, but usually every email is a task for me. So literally I have an open door where anybody can send me an email and I got to do something about it. That's ridiculous. He said, we should treat email like it's their house. And there's somebody out front of your house to say, before you come in my house, am I going to let you in my house? If I don't let you in my house, it just goes right in the garbage. If I do let you in, then what room do you go in? Do you go into the receipts room? Do you go into the reading room? Do you go into the shopping room? Do you go into the reply room? Where do you go? And so you start to realize they built their own logic around it to basically say, like, here's how I want to do email. Right? The crazy part is that, like, they struggled with it and they knew other people struggled with it. But their first week, they thought they might have 10,000 users. They had 150,000 users in the first week.
Whoa.
So this is where, is that a big struggling moment? Hell yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And do people have to, like, they started with no calendar. So it was like, how do I actually adjust my calendar to this? And so there was lots of people who had anxiety about switching to it because the calendar and the email have to go together. So now they're building a calendar. But ultimately, this is a big struggling moment that most people are going like, God, there's got to be a better way. And so the other thing I would say is one of the examples I use with people to talk about, different jobs. I talk about like, so do you text people? Yeah. Do you email people? Yeah. Do you call people? Yeah. So tell me the context when you would email versus you would text versus you just call. And you realize that there's a hiring set of criteria you have around it to say like, oh, it's not really urgent. It's more of a informational only. Okay, I'm going to send it as an email. Oh, I want him to know this little thing immediately. It's this small. Okay, I'll text it. Call, like the interesting part is I think the magnitude of a call, like a phone call versus a video conference, are like two completely different sets. So they don't actually compete with each other. Right. And so you start to realize, even though they're all forms of communication, you have your own algorithm of how you decide when to do what. And the more you can understand that, the fact is you actually will be a better user of it, because half the time you're trying to do an email when you should be doing a text, or you should be doing a phone call when you're actually doing an email. It's like, why are we doing this? It's because people don't look at themselves enough to know what does progress really mean?
But at the same time, and probably I will ask again this question because it needs to land in my head. How you assess if it's a problem worth solving or a struggle worth solving?
I don't. They do. I want to know places where people have tried to solve it and they gave up on it.
So the part that they invested money or they
invested time. So I think it's, so what have you done to solve the email problem? And like, oh, right. And they just roll their eyes. Like, we've tried this. We went to Microsoft. We did that. We did that. Like, and why'd you give up? It's like, because nothing worked. Oh, okay. So now I know that. So what are the big struggles you have with it now? Bam. They'll tell me all of them.
Okay.
So one of the gifts I have as being dyslexic is, that you're the stupidest person in the room. And so I never think I know the answer to any of it. And if I do think I know the answer, I'm almost always wrong. And so I don't look to say, oh, this is what a big struggling moment. I'm like, is this something that you've tried to do something with? And when they say yes, and I understand what it is, then it's potential where I could build a product. If they bitch about it, but they don't do anything with it, I'm not wasting my time there. There's a lot of, so the phrase I use, there's a lot of bitching and not switching. Right. And so what happens is people end up like, oh, this is bad. Like, well, then like, all right, you should fire them. They're like, yeah, I don't know who I should go to. I don't know what so the anxiety forces kick in to go like, well, what would I do with all my data? I can't get away from Apple because I have all this other stuff in it. And it's like, okay, then don't complain about it. If you're not going to try to make progress on it, all you're doing is making yourself miserable. It's like the trade-off you have to make that you haven't made.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and it's this word with no bitching and switching. It's
not, again, it's not politically or correct, but at the same time, like it's real.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I appreciate in our conversation, that it's very straightforward and to the point.
I try to be as direct and straightforward as I can. I sometimes oversimplify things to make a point, but at the same time, this is hard work and it's time consuming. But this is where I say, we go slow to make it smooth. And once we make it smooth, we can go fast. And so a lot of people want to go fast at the beginning. And I would tell you that that's the mistake. The problem is they don't know what to do in the beginning. So they just do a lot of things. So like I work for Techstars, right? And in Techstars, the cohorts I work with, Chicago, Oakland, and San Francisco, in those cohorts, they would read demand side sales as part of the application process. And they would have to do interviews before the pitch and then start to at least demonstrate what they've learned from those interviews. Now, they don't do it very well, but the thing is, you can tell by the people who actually learned a lot will be powerful in it. And that's actually helps us understand who we can really be successful with. The other part is we actually then take products that are not cool, but actually will help people make progress and create value in society.
Now I get what you're saying, and it's quite interesting to observe that. And I wanted to go back to a point that I like the way that the discussion is going, but at a certain point remain into my head, and how you help startup founders go from 0 to 1. Like, one of the biggest challenges as a founder is to find the first clients to believe in something that it's shit, as you said, and it's not working, and you need to patch it, and in the backstep you're doing a lot of manual work. But how you...
The first thing I would say is I make them go find people who have already bought something.
Okay.
So for example, I worked with Facebook on their marketplace, right? And the anomaly we saw was basically somebody on Messenger selling they posted something on Facebook, and then basically they're selling their drums, and then it went to a process of going to Messenger, and then from Messenger it went to text, and then from text it actually got to the transaction that they were going to do. So the idea was maybe we can actually build a platform to have help people sell things. And so
I'm a power user, so I know.
Yeah. So what we did is we basically said, like, look, we don't want to go build this thing. Let's go study where people do this already. So we went to Etsy, we went to eBay, and we went to Craigslist. And we interviewed two sets of customers who created an account to sell something, and other people who basically went there to buy something. And by understanding both sides of those things, we were able to actually build Facebook Marketplace not only faster, but it actually got to very high volumes very quickly. Very quickly, like 150 million in the first four or 5 months. I mean, it's crazy numbers. But part of it is because we learned from everybody else. We didn't learn by making our own mistakes.
Okay. But
right? So the phrase I give founders is, tell me what people will stop doing when they have your product. What are people going to fire when they're going to use your product? So they're going to fire eBay or Etsy or Craigslist to use Facebook Marketplace. Like, okay, let's go study them. Because one is we can understand why they're coming, and two is then we can understand the struggling moments they have about using the platform. And we can get rid of those things out of the hat.
Okay. So basically understand what they don't like there.
Well, understand the context of why they did it, understand the outcome they want, but then understand the struggling moments they have within it and making it work. Oh, you know what? Getting the money is just so hard. It's like, oh my gosh, like I can sell it, but like getting the money, they hold it for 5 days. They do this and this and this. You know what? We're going to have a new policy on money. It causes people to switch because they struggle with getting the money.
But how you change the lens when you go to B2B? Because you
don't. It's the same lens. What causes my son's building a sales enabled AI tool to help people on the front lines of sales basically not only record everything they do, but then start to give suggestions, right? And so what we have to do is go off and talk to people who bought tools. There's tools out there that allegedly do this, and he's out there interviewing around it. And he's built a product in 5 weeks that actually is better than anybody's that is out there, and actually simpler.
Okay,
but he already got funding. But he started by saying, like, here's the problem, here's the struggling moment, here's what other people are buying now, and if we do this, people will fire this to buy this.
Now I get what you're saying. It's at the same time to understand what they will gonna fire.
That's right.
Get your solution into the organization.
Right. And if they're very happy with it, I would tell you, like, we don't need we shouldn't be going into this because they're satisfied. Because when people are satisfied, they don't even look.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So the way I say is questions create spaces in the brain for solutions to fall into. And if there's no question, there's no space for the solution to fall into.
If you go into the part where now the world is going into the AI.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you? Oh, yeah.
I'm deep down this rabbit hole. Go ahead, keep going.
Really?
No, yeah.
It's. I was like really curious. Have you tried, or does it bring any value? The user using synthetic data to validate some assumptions.
Yeah. So, for me, I would tell you that I have not been able to make that work, and I have been trying very hard to make that work. But what I have been able to do is if I feed it the interviews and I feed it the analysis that I do, because what it can't do is it can't actually judge intent. It takes words, but it has no way to aggregate the intention behind the words. And that's what Jobs is really about. So it can't actually get to that. But once I get to a certain point and want to confirm, I can use some insights. But the thing is here's the real problem, is that the consumers lie and they act irrationally. And so, and if you think about what any AI is it's actually logic. And so this is the illogic of what it is. And so it will actually miss most of the opportunities, because this is where, nobody's willing to pay more on an interest of a loan everybody wants the best deal. It turns out that's a lie. It's like my previous bank was really bad to me. And the fact is I would rather go to a better bank who's going to be a partner and pay them a few more points so I can actually have a partner in the game than have somebody who's literally trying to put me out of business every 6 weeks.
Okay.
Right. And so you start to realize that's irrational, but the irrational becomes rational with context. And AI can't do that quite yet.
Yeah, I totally get. But at the same time, like one of the things that...
So let me be clear. I use it very powerfully to help me prototype to learn. When I think about, for example, writing copy, I'll actually do 5 or 6 different versions of it and then mash it, and I'll mash it together. But it can give me really good prototypes of what to say or what not to say. And so I'm using it extensively to help me prototype to learn where I know I don't know. And I instead of asking it for the answer, I ask it for 4 different kinds of answers and look across those to find out what I think is the most intelligent answer for what I'm trying to do. Because there's never there. This is the other fallacy, is at least for us, I was taught that there's only one answer. There's the right answer. Well, in real life, there's not one answer. There's always multiple answers. Always. Doing nothing is an answer.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a competitor.
It is a competitor. And so you have to think about it that way. And so the notion is like, this is where you get a lot of academics who want to talk about kind of the right way to develop a product or the right way to run the startup. And it's very academic in nature, but the reality is it's not based in any forms of it's an aggregation of, so the way I call this the zoo effect. It's a bunch of academics looking at successful startups, looking for features and benefits of what they did, and then aggregating it together and saying, well, if you do all these things, you'll be successful. That just doesn't work. But that's how their system works. They're averaging everybody's systems.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And I was going back to back to my question.
All right.
One thing that I understood, and I will go to the final of the interview, but I wanted to mention something like what I understood from using synthetic data for user interviews, just to get to the better questions and trying to understand better struggling context, just to put it in front of people.
Yep.
Like that was one of the biggest values that I found, because you put people in front of, like in interrogations, as you said, you put them in front of the issue and do you have this? And they were like,
the moment, but see, that's the point. Now you want to say is like, what words did I say that actually resonated with you? Because you want to know because you probably gave them 30 words, but there's only 3 words that really actually were the things that made that resonate. And so part of it is to understand that struggling moment. So I'm not opposed to having some language for it, but I want to know their language. The moment you show them something, it's your language to them as opposed to their language to you. And so you start to realize that you end up tainting the interview because you're giving language that they never were introduced to. And so I try to get the struggling moments out first in their language. And then when I can't, I will actually say, well, some people have struggled with this and oh my gosh, yeah, we do that. So, but I try to get it as raw as I can from there, because the one of the key points is that you want to actually talk about the problem the way they talk about the problem, not the way you want to talk about the problem.
Yeah. Here that's a very nice nuance. How do you see the AI impacting our job as product managers, as people who are building products?
Yeah. So I think if I look at history and I look at innovations that would be similar to this, is what this is going to do is it's going to force all of us to work to the top of our profession. If you think about all the work you do and how much time you spend, let's say, summarizing notes or writing PowerPoints or doing all this this work that literally should take 10 minutes but takes 4 hours, it's like it's going to help you become more efficient. And so the false notion to me is that people are saying, oh, I can take AI and let it replace an engineer. I'm like, no, let me actually give AI to the engineer so they can actually do better work.
Okay.
Right. And if you look in the medical community, you look at, so for example, one of the things about, we had in the States, we had this congestive heart failure. And what you had is you had open heart surgery. But the fact is you could do this thing called angioplasty, which is a place where you put it in the vein and you basically blow it up and you kind of widen the arteries again. But you'd get no heart surgeon to do that work because at some point it just wasn't worth their time. So they actually got somebody else to do that work. And so what happens is they've actually allowed everybody to work at the top of their profession so they can do more people all the way around. Instead of forcing the cardiac surgeons to do the angioplasty, they actually got I think the phlebotomist, I don't remember exactly who does it, but there's another tier of professionals that do that. So it's now forcing everybody to be at the top of their profession. And again, as a founder, I should spend more time thinking than necessary. And if writing helps me think, that's fine. But I should spend more time thinking than I'm actually building.
Okay.
Building, a lot of building and rework comes because we didn't do the thinking up front.
I wanted to understand one last thing, and it's that if you look at the history of innovation and
yep.
Which is now a lot of people are scared for their jobs because AI came and it will shape in a different way of form how they're going to work. Yep. There was any moment in time that it's similar with this from your experience or knowledge?
So I worked at Ford Motor Company in the 80s. And in the 80s, we had something called a typing pool. So any document or memo that was a formal document had to be, you'd handwrite it and you'd send it to a group of people who would type this up, and they type it on carbon paper. And this group of people was like 10,000 people. It wasn't like small, right? It was a big group of people. And the moment that word processors came into the realm, everybody's like, oh my God, all the typists are going to go away. The typing pool is going to be like, no. So they had a big resistance because at some point it's like, at some point these jobs are going to go away. Well, it turns out that those people became project managers and assistants and all these other things to help people with a whole bunch of other stuff to work at the top of their profession, as opposed to just clicking at typewriters. And so you start to realize like that's my hope in humanity, is that at some point in time, it looks like it's actually going to take your job. But I would say in hindsight, you should look at it and say, thank you for taking my job because I can do better. I can be better. I can do more stuff. And so the reality is like most people who are going to cruise or just kind of lay back and just chill what they were doing, it's going to take their job. It will, but it's going to force everybody to step up.
Okay, good.
It's like having a smart brother. You hate them, but they're always right.
Good. Thank you very much, Bob. It was extraordinary.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope your listeners like it. And if there's questions and they come back with questions and you want to do a follow-up, I'm more than happy to do that if that makes sense.
Yes, but thank you very much for everything. For me, it was a pleasure and it was an honor to see you because your books shaped a lot of what I'm doing today.
Thank you for being a good student.
Știu, e finalul podcastului și vreau să-ți mulțumesc că ai ajuns până aici. Și în același timp partenerilor BCR, Google, How2Web și Startup.ro. Iar până la următorul episod, ca să ai ce face, te așteptăm pe launch.ro să intri în comunitatea Launch Romania, unde găsești evenimente și inițiative Loved by Launch. Bye!